Redditors, have you ever found yourself in a very dangerous or potentially deadly situation, suddenly solved by a friend or a total stranger with apparently no effort? I worked as a chef in a very nice restaurant in Cleveland, Ohio in the mid-1980s. It was located near a very bad neighborhood, and some of our dishwashers lived in that neighborhood. I was a young, white kid from the suburbs, and one of the dishwashers was a black man in his late 30s named Harold, who went by Hurl. No idea why. Anyway, Hurl and I became friends. He was a rather jovial guy, and he was interested in cooking, so I taught him a few things, and eventually got him promoted from dishwasher to cook. He was actually quite good, and loved the new job, and me for helping him out. One day he asked me if I wanted to go out and partying with him after work. Being young and adventurous, I took him up on his offer, and into the neighborhood we went. For those of you familiar with Cleveland, it was the Huff Avenue neighborhood. We eventually ended up in an after-hours club, which is where all the drunk people ended up when the bars all closed. I was wandering around a smoke-filled room with lots of very seedy-looking people, and I was quite drunk at the time. I ended up in a corner somewhere, surrounded by a small gang of people wondering who I was. They started closing in on me, and one of them asked me if I had $1 I could give him. I felt my skin get clammy, and realized I was about to get jacked by some drunk guys in a bad neighborhood. Suddenly Hurl shows up, looks at the guy asking me for $1 and says he with me. Hurl has a look on his face I have never seen before, a lot more menacing than anyone in the gang surrounding me. The gang immediately changes their tune, and suddenly I am their friend, and one of them asks me if I would like a beer and offers me the one he has been drinking. I respectfully decline, and Hurl and I move away. Hurl looks at me, still with that menacing look, and says anyone comes up to you in this hood, you tell them you with Hurl. They know me, and they know I don't play. Good to know. This was in Karachi, Pakistan in the late 90s. We were at my uncle's place who was renovating his house. He had a small cement mixer set up behind the house which was taking up some of the alley. Usually, when someone is building a house, the cops will show up and say the mixer is illegal and ask for a bribe to turn a blind eye. Problem is, on this particular day, pretty much all the cops started showing up one by one. Each one would say pay us and no one else will bother you, and a few minutes later a new police van would show up saying the same thing. We had enough and stopped paying him. This pissed off one of the cop vans and a couple of officers showed up at our door. We kids opened it and the officer asked us to come with him. He took us to the end of the alley where 5-6 cops were standing, AK-47s drawn. We all shat bricks while the officer kept saying, "Why won't your parents pay? Why won't your parents pay?" Things were not looking good. Luckily one of our neighbors saw the cops rounding up the kids and walking us away. He was a big shot in a major gang. He left his house, got on his motorbike and drove over to where we were stood. Told the cop let them go, if you know what's good for you. The cops left. No one bothered us again until the construction was done. Another Karachi story in the same vein. Every now and then, there is a general strike in Karachi which is enforced by local gangs. By enforced that means they'll gun down anybody who leaves their houses. It's not always that bad, but this is the threat. During one of these strikes, my uncle's aunt, not the same uncle as the last story, fell sick and had to be taken to the hospital which was right around the corner from my uncle's place. You could walk to it. My uncle was at the hospital all day looking after her and decided to head home in the afternoon. Streets were deserted and he made haste. When he was literally 20 meters from his home, a gang of bikers saw him, chased and cornered him. They asked him why he was out during the strike and he tried explaining. They'd have none of it. They had their weapons leveled at him while he backed up against the gate to his neighbor's home. He banged at their metal gate for help, but who the heck would come out in that situation? Suddenly, a car drives by, black, with tinted windows. A window rolls down and says let this one go. Bikers left. Uncle sprinted for his house, got in, and started shaking uncontrollably. And that is how we found him and he told us this story. I got cornered for a beating in a new high school, surrounded by about 20 kids. This one kid who I met a day earlier casually walked along a fence rail through the crowd and swiftly kicked the lead kid in the face. End of story. Saved me from a beating. He was like James Dean. Never got to thank him. A guy who was harassing me in a bar got ejected. I learned he waited outside to attack me. Another patron apparently witnessed what went on in the bar, saw the guy laying for me, and sucker punched him. Maybe he was waiting to apologize to you properly. When I was about 14 it was summer and we lived by the sea. My dad had a dinghy in the loft from the 70s along with paddles, and me and a guy called Peter H took it out down the beach. Minus paddles. Bad idea. We went with Peter's brother and were carefree messing about in the dinghy when we realized we were drifting out to sea. We got out, started paddling and trying to swim back and couldn't touch the bottom. We kept trying in vain and in the end realized we were fricked. This was the northeast coast of England, in the North Sea. Temperature was about 4 degrees. We shouted to his brother on the beach, now about 150 meters away, to get help. Unbelievably, some guy walking on the beach stripped down to his pants and swam out. Dropped everything and swam out. He came to us, grabbed the boat we were clinging to and swam us back to shore. We got dry next to some fishing boats and lent him a towel before saying thanks. I genuinely believe he got us out a lot of trouble, and I never even got to find out his name. Aquaman's legend continues. I was working in a specialty running shoe vitamin store and this guy came in and walked around for a while, just kinda looking at different things, said he didn't need help when I asked him. About 15 minutes later when the store clears out he comes up to the front counter and pulls out a fairly large knife and demands the money out of the cash register. Being 17 at the time and feeling half panic half anger, I started to talk loudly. "Alright, I will give you the money. Don't hurt me," hoping that the cashier at the store next to mine would hear and call the police. The walls were thin and we'd mess with each other as such. My dad's friend is a cop in my town, and every so often will randomly show up at work to mess with me. Sometimes this comes in the form of pretending to do a SWAT raid through the back door, which was directly behind the register. I don't lock the door while I'm working, as my boss usually stopped by 2 or 3 times to just walk in and check something and leave. This time, my dad's friend just strolls and yelling something about terrible service and what a bad employee I am. See this guy with a knife out and pulls his service weapon. Guy drops knife, gets arrested. The one day I'm incredibly happy that my dad's friend comes in to screw with me. TLDR. Cop messing with me saves me from getting robbed. Must have been confusing for anyone that heard that. Man, this service is terrible. Get to the ground. You're under arrest. I was at Pismo Beach in California, about 13 years old at the time, boogie boarding and not really paying attention to the fact that the current had been pushing me closer and closer to the pier. I guess I figured when I started getting too close I would just easily swim away and that would be that. When I finally realized that I was going to be slammed into the mussel and fishing hook encrusted pillars soon if I didn't start moving away, I began to swim the opposite direction. This is when I realized that swimming against the current is much harder than swimming with it. I started paddling furiously and then began panicking because I wasn't making any progress. With each wave I was being pushed closer to the pier. It would be just a couple more cycles before I started bouncing around underneath the pier. That's when I noticed a man standing in the water next to me. It was about waist deep. Feeling like an idiot, I slid off my board, stood up, and walked ashore. Just for the record, I believe the idea is to swim sideways out of the current, if you can. When I was in high school, I worked at the local video store. It was a small town and everyone knew one another. Anyway, these 2 thuggish black dudes, who were the main crack coke dealers for the hood, would come in the store once a month and intimidate me into getting rid of their late fees because they never brought anything back on time. My boss finally caught on and told me that I couldn't do that anymore no matter how scary they were, so they show up a few weeks later expecting me to waive their fees. I explained to them that I could potentially get fired but I would do it for them one last time. They actually understood and were appreciative. As they were walking out, they gave me their pager number and said if I ever needed anything to call them. I assumed they meant I could call them for weed, coke, or whatever else they dabbled in, so I just kind of ignored it and went about my life. Flash forward a few months and I'm hooking up with this girl who had just broken up with her super redneck boyfriend. Mr. Redneck was not pleased when he found out about the situation. He showed up at the video store one night with some of his moron friends and informed me that they would be waiting for me in the parking lot and were going to beat the crap out of me after I closed the store for the evening. I still had several hours before close, and as time went by several more truckloads of rednecks showed up. I was really starting to sweat. There were 15-20 dudes just waiting to teach me a lesson. It seemed there was no way to get out of this beating. Out of sheer desperation, I paged the scary drug dealer guys. They called me back pretty quickly. I explained what was going on and asked if they could help me out. They told me not worry, they would be there shortly. I didn't know what to expect. I continued my closing duties while I waited for them to show up. Once I turned the lights off to the store, the mob in the parking lot started getting riled up. They were yelling and taunting me through the windows. I had run out of things to do in the store and the dudes I had paged still hadn't shown up. As I was setting the alarm and mentally preparing for a demoralizing butt beating, a procession of hoopties pull into the parking lot and circle the trucks. I watched from the window as the dealers and their friends all pulled out guns and told the rednecks in no uncertain terms that I was not to be fricked with. To this day, I have never seen people scramble so fast. There were literally tire marks in the parking lot from all of the trucks peeling out to get away. This one event led to me never being fricked with by anyone in my hometown ever again. It was pretty nice. I could talk all the crap I wanted to with impunity since everyone was so scared of those guys. Good times. TL. DR multiple rednecks wanted to beat my butt over a girl and scary drug dealers saved me. I hope you continue to waive their late fees. Car wreck on my way to school a few years ago. My little Honda Civic Versus. Large semi-truck. I blacked out for a short period. When I realized what happened, I couldn't get my car door open. The window on my side was slightly open from the crash and I start panicking thinking the car is going to explode or something. Random stranger next to the car goes, "Calm down. Try the other door." So I climb over the center console and got out of the car. Holy crap. Same thing happened to me. He said, "Dude, you're not going to get that door open. Try the other one," and had disappeared by the time I got out. How about a non-human stranger? I was about 8 or 9 walking home from school. About a block from my house, some random pit bull runs up to me and starts growling. Scared the crap out of me. I figure I am at death's door, when out of nowhere another dog came to my aid. I believe it was a German Shepherd. This dog ran to my side and started barking at the pit bull until it left. I didn't know this dog and I don't believe I ever saw him or again. It was a pretty surreal situation. My dog hated going anywhere near my garage, let alone inside it. He was a big baby about loud noises and I think the occasional sound of power tools scared him. I was changing my brakes one day and, because I'm a moron, wasn't using jack stands. My Jeep was just up on a hydraulic jack. All of a sudden, my dog starts nipping at my back. The oddity of him even being in the garage didn't register. It was just annoying. After 5-6 of these seemingly playful bites, I got fed up. I put my socket down, pulled my legs out from underneath the wheel, and went to stand up. I was going to put my dog inside the house to keep him from bothering me. Within a second of me standing up, the jack broke. Not sure how much a Cherokee Sport weighs, but the noise it made crashing onto the floor was like a bomb. With the tire off, the bare wheel would have landed 6 inches above my knees. I know it was coincidence, but I still wonder why he did that. He passed away 3 days ago at the ripe old age of 10, 1/2. Dogs are the freaking best. I was riding a bus in Brooklyn. I was trying some new bus routes instead of the subway because they could often be faster. It was going up into a very rough part of Brooklyn, basically Eastern Bedford's Stuyvesant. I was going to go to where Thebes crossed the subway line. I am the only white guy on a bus full of black people, which in itself was not unusual. An old guy sitting on the bus walks over to me and says, "You need to get off the bus now. You can't go further. It's not going to end well for you." I don't know if he saw something specific or was speaking in general. He was sincere. I got off the bus and walked a few blocks to catch a transfer from there. I bet you were about to cross over into Bushwick. If so, he was right. My family and I were the only ones on a deserted beach in Florida. I, being stupid and about 11, decided to swim a little far from the beach and got caught by an undertow. I remember the desperate, Futile feeling of swimming harder towards land but seeing it get farther and farther away. Since only my family was there, and my parents aren't good at swimming, I was a goner. Out of nowhere came a strong swimmer, told me to calm down, gave me a flotation device, and swam me back to the beach. Before I could properly thank him, he disappeared. He was a ghost. WHO drowned there years before. I had recently moved to the Columbia Heights neighborhood in Northwest DC a few years ago, and for those who don't know, the Columbia Heights was really bad about 10 years ago but is in the process of gentrifying. The neighborhood is pretty culturally and racially diverse and I could afford it. One day I was walking home from work and was about 2 blocks from my house but slightly off the beaten path on a most empty street. I had my earbuds, which isn't always the safest thing to do just because you can lose situational awareness. I also had a laptop bag with no laptop, which again isn't all that smart. Anyway, a dude is walking towards me on the sidewalk and is around my age. We make eye contact and he says something unintelligible to me and I say something like sorry, assuming I was either in his way or he was begging. I notice he has bloodshot eyes, and if I had to guess was probably a Sikh. I angle my body towards him as we pass each other and the next thing I know he is grabbing for my earbuds. He pulls them out of my ears but doesn't quite get them as I jump back. I'm sort of in shock, but I've been in fights before but not when I had no build up to the moment. I think I yelled something like WTF, and as he was coming at me again I was thinking I probably could take the guy but should try to avoid blood, hitting his teeth with my fist. I don't know why my first thought here was risk of hepatitis rather than maybe I should run my butt away, which would be much smarter. But as he comes at me again, suddenly some unseen man is in front of me and pushes the dude away. Seekhead then stands his ground and dang if the man doesn't push him again and then starts yelling at him to get the frick out of the neighborhood and berating him over and over. Seekhead turns toward the main street and begins to move quickly away. The man is yelling loudly at him the whole time, echoing off the nearby houses. I am kinda just staring at this point as adrenaline is coursing through me. At that moment, suddenly a little girl, maybe 3-4 years old, on a tricycle rides past me in the same direction as the man in the Seekhead, opposite direction I was heading. She is just following her daddy, the man who saved me, like it is the most normal thing in the world, most surreal thing I had ever experienced. I just sort of watch as the three of them head back to the main street. I never got a chance to say thanks. TLDR. Seekhead randomly assaults me. Man comes out of nowhere to save my butt and swears like a sailor at the perpetrator while his little daughter rides her tricycle a few feet behind. I was the stranger once, in Toronto at the Yonge and Egg subway stop, mother and her 2 young kids standing fairly far back from the edge. Train's coming in pretty fast when the one kid bolts straight for the tracks like a retard. My back's turned but I hear mom scream. I turn around and see the kid out of the corner of my eye. On instinct I grab for him and happen to get him right by the front of the shirt and hoist him about 5 feet off the ground in half a second just as the train flies by with the horn blaring. It was pure luck, but I played it cool and handed him over to his mother trying to sound suave. Is this yours? Raised eyebrow. Funny thing, she didn't even seem that grateful. Maybe the kid is prophesied to end the world or something, in which case I'd like to apologize to you all in advance. I didn't know. A friend of mine saw a kid playing in the middle of the road and took him back home. The mom was mad at him. I think parents just hate to look bad, or perhaps the close call was just too shocking to process immediately. My friend and I were working landscaping. He was using a motorized lift on the back of a large truck and, unbeknownst to me, had his hand wedged in the lift and he could not turn the lift on the back of the truck off, essentially slowly watching himself having to lose his fingers in the lift gate. I walk over, absent-mindedly turn it off and save his hand in the last second, not even realizing something was wrong. I was drinking with a friend and his younger brother. My friend had recently finished his enlistment from the Marines, and we were out celebrating. His younger brother ended up having words with a gangster white rapper wannabe. It escalates into a let's take it outside. We go out in the parking lot. More words and chest puffing. Mini Eminem pulls out a gun and points it at my friend's younger brother. I'm like crap, and my butthole tightens up. However, my friend walks up to the guy, slaps him in the face, and says, "Put the gun away, you dumb butt, and go home." Guy puts the gun up and leaves. TLDR. Don't mess with a former Marine with PTSD. Upvote for my butthole tightens up. I was doing a show at this wretched comedy club in Brockton, Massachusetts. There was a drunk chick who would not stop talking, so after a few polite back and forths, I say something along the lines of, will someone stick a dong in her mouth and shut her up? Note, this is an old, lame thing to say, but it usually works. And like I said, that does the trick and she's quiet the rest of the show. I finish my set and come off stage. I'm walking out to the front room of the club, and I'm suddenly aware of an enormous shape coming towards me. It's the Hasselback's boyfriend. He's got like 8 inches and 100 pounds on me, and he's P. He shoves me into the front room and is doing the whole pre-fight, "Why you talking about my girl that way" chest bump kind of thing, when suddenly 3 dudes just kind of sweep into the room. They're all built like fire plugs and wearing matching skin tight Adidas workout shirts like some kind of working class superhero team. One of them closes the doors to the showroom and blocks them. Another goes and stands by the front door, like he's standing guard or something, while the third gets between me and the big dude, who says, "What the frick, man, you want to fight?" And the guy says in the calmest, coldest voice, "Yes, I do. Let's fight." Something in the way he says it totally takes the steam out of the big dude. He just backs right down, like, "No, man, it's cool. We're all cool here." And then my mean little savior goes, "This guy was hilarious. Your girlfriend's a C, and you owe him an apology and a beer." And the big guy nods and goes and gets me a beer before going back into the show with his tail between his legs. Turns out these guys were off-duty Brockton Vice cops. Totally saved my stupid butt. This is a friend's story, but I was there and saw it take place. This took place in the late 80s. This girl, a super pretty black girl who had worked her way out of the ghetto and into the middle class, was walking home from work one day. A mile from her home, a car pulled up with 2 gang girls. They proceeded to rob this girl of everything she had and left her naked alongside the road. Literally, naked. Nobody will help her. She is supremely embarrassed. Finally, some guy gives her a jacket and she calls the cops. They show up, treat her like crap, but give her a ride home. She gets home to find her home has been robbed, stripped clean by the 2 girls who had her address from her driver's license and her house keys from her purse. TV, gone. Clothes, gone. Even her kitchen stuff, gone. The cops leave making a crack about how she was probably robbed by somebody she knew. They weren't going to do a thing. My friend is hysterical, crying. She thinks of all the people she knew who could help her in some way. Someone who could make the cops pay attention. Someone who could get her stuff back. She calls Jim Brown. That's right, legendary pro football player, Hollywood actor, black icon and all around bad but kicker. She tells him the story. He says he will take care of it. She asks what he is going to do, but he just tells her not to worry. A few hours later a truck pulls up to her home. A few guys get out, open the door and unload everything that was stolen from her. Everything. Jim Brown, one bad butt mother. This one is my dad's. He had just got his new Lotus Esprit, 1970s, and was driving it around some residential roads when smoke started bellowing from the bonnet. He stopped the car, jumped out, but there was nothing he could do. No mobile phones, no way to call for a fire engine. Popped the bonnet and flames engulfed the entire engine bay. Then out of nowhere some guy runs up, puts his jacket on the burning engine and puts out the flames. My dad's still in shock that his very new, very expensive car just caught on fire. He checks the damage for a bit, turns around to thank the guy, but he's gone. That's a true baller, right there. Any car that James Bond drove is worth protecting regardless. When I was in 8th grade, I was kind of an odd kid. So some people, naturally, made notice and took advantage of the situation by treating me like crap in the most bizarre manners. One day, I'm walking down the hall when I made quick eye contact with this guy who sort of knew me, and didn't think too highly of me. So, he walks over, grabs me by the shoulders, holds me against the wall and starts deliberately saying things like penis, queefs, sex. I guess he thought I was terrified of sex or something. After a couple seconds of just waiting to get punched in the face, I hear a kind of roar, and the guy is gone in a grey flash. I look to my right and he's being hurled back by this special guy who I would talk to, mainly because I could understand his speech. even though he had a severe impediment, but also because he would listen, on occasion, and he's holding the kid back and making almost a barking sound. The guy flips out. What else would you do if you're being held down by a guy barking at you, and runs off? I thanked the guy. I feel bad because I can't fully remember his name, but I'm pretty sure it was something like Ed, and he just shrugs it off and says, "Hey, you're my friend and that guy was yelling at you." He never got in trouble for this, from what I saw, because he was special and, honestly, how would you report that? I was just holding this guy against a wall yelling sexual terms in his face when I got tackled. TLDR. Or some special guy tackles a kid who felt the need to hold me against a locker and spout out sexual terms. Dang, I'm glad I spoke to him. Was riding my bike home from 7th grade. I was about 13, in the middle of 100+ degree heat in Arizona. My usual riding friend was homesick that day, so I was by myself. 2 high school kids ride past me, stop and turn around after me. They started yelling, "Hey kid," me being the obedient new teenager. I stopped. "Bullies. You know my kid brother Steve?" Me. "No, I don't know a Steve." "Bullies. Bulls. My kid brother goes to school with you and he told me you tried to beat him up today." Me. "I don't know who Steve is. Honest. I never met anyone named Steve." "Bullies." After getting off of their bikes, they started pushing me. "I know you're the guy. You scared the crap out of him. Now I am going to fricking beat your butt." Me, being the P I was at that age, started crying. "I have no idea who Steve is. Please leave me alone. I just want to go home, sob sob." Bullies. Pushing some more, almost knocking me off my bike. "You're dead." All of a sudden, a balding older man driving a grey Cadillac pulls up right next to us. He rolls down his window and starts screaming at the bullies. "Stranger, you boys, you get away from him. Leave him alone. If you don't get out of here, I'm going to call the cops." Bullies. "Wah, stranger, I mean it. You boys leave him alone. I am calling the cops on you." At this point, he opened his passenger door by leaning over. "Stranger, kid, get in. I'll drive you home," looking back at the high schoolers. "You boys leave or I will wait here until the cops arrive." The bullies thankfully left because I was a blubbering baby crying heavily. "Stranger, get in kid. I'll take you home." Not sure why, but my gut told me not to get in this guy's car. You know, all the stranger danger training I was raised on kicked in. I am almost positive he was just trying to do the right thing and things would have been cool, but I didn't want to take that chance. Through my tears, I told him thank you and rode my bike the rest of the way home. My parents were proud that someone helped me and even more proud that I didn't get into a stranger's car. Formatting. Good call. He paid those bullies. Same guy actually saved my butt 3 times in high school. First time, 9th grade. Some big bully type, like no friends, everyone hates type bully, starts getting in my face and like pushes me or something. So I, being puny and weak, go for laughs and pretend to push him, but really just push myself back. He's not having it, and right as he's starting to get in my face, this big Mexican guy and his 2 big friends get between us and say to the kid, "Why don't you pick on someone your own size?" The big guy squeamishly says, "Nah, it's cool," and backs away. 10th grade, we were playing football in gym, and we were playing touch, not tackle, and we agreed on this. Some kid a little bigger than me but smaller than everyone else tackles me to the ground as soon as I catch the ball. I didn't really think anything of it until gym was over and before we left the field. This big Mexican angel comes up to the guy who tackled me, puts the football in his hand and says, "Run forward." The guy is kind of confused. "Run forward." So he runs forward. My angel picks him up and throws him on the ground and says something along the lines of "play by the rules" or something. 10th grade again. This guy is getting into an argument with some other guy and the other guy says something like "go eat a Twinkie." Big guy gets super mad and starts saying all kinds of angry stuff. He calms down eventually and they go away, but the other guy's locker is right next to mine. I tried offering some friendly advice like, "Dude, probably not a good idea to say that to a guy twice your size." The dude flips out and starts talking to me like he's going to kick my butt. And of course, big Mexican guy comes out from the corner, pushes the guy into a locker, tells him to get dressed and leave, and he does. Oh, he had a hot girlfriend too. Thanks Steve, you were a beast. For some reason I'm really happy he had a hot girlfriend. It's weird that someone would ask this. The one and only time I have felt my life was in immediate danger was solved by just this situation. I was on a train platform somewhere in New Jersey and the station was empty apart from myself. After being there for a while, I noticed that a group of 3 probably mid-20s men came up the stairs to the right of me. I was standing holding 2 bags of luggage and my purse, but for the most part did not feel concerned. That was until the group made their way to where I was standing on the platform. 2 men planting themselves dead behind me and 1 to the front. We all stood in dead silence with me just whipping my head behind me and back to the front to make sure this was actually happening. Just picture that. An entirely deserted platform. And they just happened to stand in a fairly close straight line near me. Heck no. Right as I felt tensions rising and started to contemplate the fight or flight idea I've heard about, a group of teens laughing and being loud came bounding up the platform stairs. The men immediately moved away from me and back into the station waiting area. It was all over in about 30 seconds. I truly believe if those kids hadn't come up the stairs when they did, I would have been robbed or worse. TLDR. A group of teens potentially saved me from assault by just being teens. My laptop was stolen by M-Head. My local M dealer was so off about it. He went and beat the guy's head in with a pipe. He's 1 year into a 3-year sentence. Thanks to him, I lost my source of M and had to get clean. Saved my life. He did. The guy who stole it ended up getting 5 years for pulling a shotgun out at a tattoo parlor near my place. Drug people have the craziest stories. While studying abroad in Italy, I was out at a bar and this awful man kept bothering me, saying crap like, "You want to touch my penis?" and trying to pull me into the back room saying, "Come with me and your night will get much better." I finally got away and went to the bar counter and got a drink with 2 much nicer locals. The creepy guy comes back for a minute and hangs around, but then wanders off to lurk nearby. I think the situation is pretty much over, until one of the guys points to my drink, and there's a small pill sitting in the bottom dissolving. The 2 men then rise, walk over to the creeper, and tackle him to the ground. Turns out one guy was a paratrooper, and the other was a cop. TLDR. 2 men saved me from quite possibly being raped. When I was 4, I was sitting alone in the backseat of my mom's car and decided to crawl up to the front while she paid for gas. In doing so, I grabbed the stick shift, accidentally pulling it into neutral. The car starts rolling backwards, and I freeze up. Then, a random guy runs over, opens the driver door, and jumps in the car to stop it. He walks me inside, takes me to my mom, and then buys me a huge Snickers. I wish I knew him now. This is my dad's story, but thought Reddit would like it if you guys believe me. My dad worked at an upscale hotel most of his life. Because of this he has many stories about celebrities, some good some bad, but one of my favorite stories he tells is when he was a bellman. He gets off the elevator and is helping a guest with their luggage into a room when he smells smoke. Turns out, this was mid-80s. Someone left a lit cigarette in an ashtray. The housekeeper came by and threw the ashtray contents into the garbage on her cart in the hall. The cigarette smoldered and caught the trash on fire. My dad sees the fire in the cart down the hall and runs to the nearest fire extinguisher. He barely notices the other man in the hall running to grab a fire extinguisher at the other end. They meet in the middle and put out the fire. When the fire's out, my dad looks up and sees that the man is Kurt Russell. My dad says thanks. Russell says no problem. He then sets down the fire extinguisher and walks away. My thought every time I hear him tell the story, I wonder if Kurt Russell told that story when he auditioned for Backdraft. This happened, but my friend was the one in danger and I was the one who intervened to potentially save him. A few years ago I was working in the mountainous forests of northeastern British Columbia. We used to see wildlife all the time while working, while driving, everywhere. Well, one day we came across a dead moose carcass sitting off to the side of the bush road. We took a look and made a point to remember where it was so that on the way out, we could see if any scavenging animals would be hanging around the carcass. We went in and did our work, and on the way back out, we could see a huge black bear dragging the full-grown moose carcass across the road. So my friend who is in the passenger seat starts trying to take pictures through the windshield. So there I sit, patiently watching the bear, who eventually lets go of the moose and slinks back into the bush near my side of the truck. That's when I hear a door close. I look ahead, and my friend is walking out of the truck and up the road with his camera taking pictures into the bushes. I yell out the window, "Hey, get back in the freaking truck, dude." But he keeps walking away. Eventually he's pretty far up the road, so I get out of the truck and walk a few feet away to him and start yelling at him to come back. Well, he starts coming back, but walks around, away from where the bear went into the bush and heads back to the car. I grab his arm and say, "Stay over that way." This is when things went wrong. I turn my head back around to see the bear's massive head peeking out of the bush. I remembered my bear training and start saying, "Whoa bear, who are a bear," to let him know I'm there so as not to scare him. This is when things go wrong. He then charges at me from about 50 feet. I stick my hands up in the air, stand my ground and scream, frick off bear, frick off," but he just keeps coming a mile a minute. Again, once the bear is about 20 feet from me, running full tilt, I scream, "Get the frick away bear, get the frick away," at the top of my lungs, still standing ground with my knees shaking out of sheer terror. Finally, about 5 feet away, the massive beast stops. He snorts and walks back into the bush. I've never been so scared in my life. TLDR. Saved my friend from a bear. 1. Your friend is a dumbass. The bear thought you were trying to steal its lunch. This is probably the most common scenario for bear attacks. 2. Not running is probably what saved both your lives. That bear was thinking, "Dang, this dude must be really badass to just stand there like that. Ain't no way I'm gonna frick with him." If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.